Everybody talks about working smarter, not harder. And I've always wondered, after 22 years of coaching, I still wonder what the heck that means. Working smarter, not harder. And it seems like, as we go into it, there's a premise, a motive, that they're suffering. They're suffering that someone is working to a place where there's diminishing returns, they're exhausted, they have extraordinary fatigue, they don't feel like they're getting back what they're putting in. So they begin to ask themselves, is there a different way to hold this? Is there a different way to do this? Now, I think right now, with all the remote work that people are normalizing, really the relationship between our home and our work is changing right before our eyes. It's in a state of big flux in how we get our work done, where we get our work done, how we look at those two domains. I mean, certainly when you're overworked and you come home, there's an energy problem. So if you're consumed by so much work, trying to get somewhere, and then you come home, you got nothing left. So you feel out of balance. And then you say, well, what am I going to do? Because my family's important, other friends are important, other aspects, domains in my life are important, but I have an energy crisis. And I think that's really the heart of the matter, is that we are really challenged with our spirit. It fades. So why does it fade? Well, it fades because we start mastering or majoring in minor things. We are in a business. The business starts to multiply. We fire the boss. We go into this situation, and we do very well. And then we start to make money. We get paid for the time that we invest. And then we invest that money, or we pay a big roof over our head. We put our kids in the best schools. We live up to a status. We've got to keep up. We've got to look good. And so we do the upgrade to the house, and we buy the nice suits. And we spend money that we don't have trying to impress people that we don't like, buying things that we really don't need. And it's a consumer society. And so as consumers, our values, our drivers, tend to cause us to overspend. And then we go to our business, and we say, that means more hours. That means I've got to earn more out of the business with what I'm doing. So we're in this sort of scarcity of running out. We're afraid. We're being chased by the boogeyman. And so we go and chase the almighty dollar, chase the time. Now, one thing that I've realized that seems very true is that time is not money. Time is not money because you don't get paid for the time. You get paid for the value that you create for others. No matter where you are, you're working in an organization, you're creating value for the company. You're creating value for the boss. You're creating value for the team. If you're a salesperson, you're creating value for the customer, for the prospect. So you're creating value for others. So what are you doing with your time to generate value? And that's something you can leverage because you can get 2, 3, 4 times, 10 times more value with the time and resources you have. Look at what's happening with Zoom right now. Through the pandemic, Zoom has just gone off the charts. They've 35 times their growth in milliseconds. How did that happen? They have a very reliable process. They've got a great company. But can you imagine that kind of vertical growth? Right? I mean, if they had 1 million customers a year ago and now they have 35 million customers, that's radical growth. So you can only imagine what kind of reorganizing and restructuring that had to produce. How did that company step it up? How did they maintain simplicity with all that multiplication? That, to me, is the heart of the matter, is how do we keep the energy and the spirit going when the growth multiplies? Because a business is made to do that. You're not getting into business to stay flat. You're staying in business because you want to grow, you want to expand, you want to help others, you want to create market value. Therefore, you create market share, and you get a competitive advantage because you do something that other people would miss terribly if you were missing. And so you go out in the marketplace and you do this thing. But then you get consumed. So you're on that growth curve, and all the details start to come in, right? How do I handle this? I've got to delegate. I've got to plan. I've got to upgrade my systems. I've got to scale with the right people, the money, the strategy, and I've got to execute it. So indeed, it gets complex. So how do I work smarter? If working smarter is using my energy in a way that I can generate more energy, I've got to go to a space, I've got to get to a place where things are more simple, because as things are getting multiplication oriented, as there's building and growth and so forth, I've got to simplify. So how is it possible to bring simplicity in a game that invites complexity? It's coming at you from all sides. Well, one thing is focus. See, I think we get sort of besieged by the big idea that we're going to get to it all. So we clean out our inbox. We attack everything. We nail our to-do list. We expand the time to get that done. And then we create emergencies. So we start reacting and responding to things that are more immediate, because we're afraid that we might let somebody down, or that we won't give people what we promised. Yeah? And so we start to react to the easy stuff, the things that we can knock out to get the victory. And so we do. But we don't think about the unintended consequence of a sequence of those decisions. We inadvertently create the pileup that eventually it like eats us alive. We're like prisoners of our own machines. If we just keep going unconsciously and doing stuff, you might as well be a hopeless doer, because there's no perspective. You can't gain ground on being intentional or continuing to create when your trajectory is just to get things done, because then you start to slip from the things that give you energy, and you start investing in things that inspire dread. So it's about focus. What do you eliminate? What do you stop doing? Give yourself permission to eliminate, to stop doing something. If you're busy, make a decision and stop being busy. Being busy is a form of protection. It keeps you from having to face failure or learn, or in some way it's keeping you comfortable, and yet it's conflicting with your goals or your aspirations to grow and expand. So we stay in this hamster wheel, this zone or plateau of familiarity, and we can't get above this ceiling. So we struggle against it, we get frustrated, we feel very confused, we feel very isolated. Who do we talk to about this? Everything was supposed to be great. I outlasted all my critics. I told my parents, I told my buddies. They all were against me. They said I was crazy to do what I was doing. I had an entrepreneurial seizure. What am I going to do with my pride? How could I tell people that I'm going to eliminate or stop doing something? That could be fatalizing. I might not get approval, or I might not be living up to my expectations. So how am I going to let this go? And you just start kind of getting into a different mindset. It's not that you're above things. It's not like you're too good for it. It's not identity. It's about working smarter. And working smarter means we've got to look at ways to increase your simplicity so that you can get to multiplying growth and meeting the demands. And that starts with focus. Focus creates simplicity because you know hierarchically what's most important. It's not about having too much to do. If you have 20, 30, 40, even 50 things on your to-do list, that's not the problem. What makes things overwhelming is that everything has equal value. Yes, which means if you haven't assigned value to the items that are going to get done, if you haven't reflected or thought about what matters, what doesn't, you don't have movement. There's no way to have an approach. It's like if I'm an ambulance driver and I come to a train wreck and there's 100 people that are injured, a certain group of people are going to die anyway. A certain group of people are going to live anyway. But then there's a group that will die if they don't get help. So those are going to be my first order of business. I'm going to treat those 30 or 20 people first because that's where my best investments are. I make choices. I'm going to neglect or procrastinate on purpose those other ones because those are going to die anyway and they're going to live anyway. So my investments are going to come out different. But why do I undervalue my time? Because I haven't thought about what my time is worth. What is your time worth? If you take the ideal income you want to produce, the amount of hours that you're going to spend or months this year, total it up. How many hours are you going to invest in your business? What does that mean in terms of your annual income? Divide it into it and come up with an hourly rate. You'd probably be surprised that you're spending 80% of your time on $12 to $14 an hour things. You have to fire yourself. Fire yourself from everything on the org chart. Yes, make your own position description. What are the 5 or 6 most important projects, or rocks as we say, boulders, that you're going to focus on in the next 90 days? How do you come up with those? You think about where you want to be in a year. And maybe you think about where you want to be in 3 years if you can conceptually get there. At the rate of change right now, the conditions you'll be in by then will be probably totally different. But maybe a year is a good outlook. It gets you to come back to the present and think about, how do I line up the cue ball to sink the next shot? I've got to line it up in 90 days. I've got 4 12-week periods. So how am I going to put structure around these 90 days to focus on my priorities? And then as you do that, you know this, you come to the daily lens. You say, okay, what am I going to do daily? How do I know what I'm going to do daily? Well, I look at those 5 or 6 rocks. But I also look at how I'm triaging my week. So I've got 2 dimensions in my week. I've got personal and professional goals. So if you think about it, you've got personal and professional goals within 90 days. I recommend that you have 5 or 6 rocks for the personal, health, relationships, personal finance, what you want. And then you've got professional. You've got those goals there, growth goals, sales goals, management goals, finance goals. So you come up with 5 or 6, come up with the top of the top. These would be the ones that if you did them, everything else would be more simple. Everything else would be unnecessary. Things would get easier. So you're going after the big, the top of the top, first things first, personal, professional. So how do you know how you're going to navigate your daily decisions? Your weekly review. So every week, you take a power 15 minutes, you sit down with yourself, Sunday night, without fail, you're pig-headed and relentless about this, and you make it a discipline of execution. Because you get leverage by doing that. You can look at your week. You can lay out thematic time blocks. You can bundle your activities. You could take certain days and say, these are my sales days for money. These are my days for the backstage and maintenance. These are the days when I concentrate in the backstage on delegating and preparing, repairing, upgrading. I work on my business. And these are the days when I'm focusing on selling. Now, as you're hearing me, you're probably hearing a lot of backscatter in your mind. You're going, yeah, that's really nice in theory, Coach, but I can't implement that. The world isn't on my terms. The world needs it now. They want it when they want it. I can't be like a doctor and say, hey, today I'm not taking patients. Because you've made access equal to your success. You think accessibility is what makes you successful. That's wrong. It's not correct. If you make it that way, you're going to drown. You're not going to work smarter. You're going to work hard. You're going to work so hard, you're not going to have a business anymore. Your enthusiasm is going to be gone. Your doubt, your interference, your lack of confidence, it's all going to continue to worsen because you can't get to anything important and you can't even think or plan. If you go that way, don't do it. Don't be so accessible. Because when you do that, you've basically said that there's nothing else that's better. Your competitors will match you with that in a heartbeat. Anybody can be more accessible, be more responsive. That's necessary. It's not sufficient. That's not competitive. There's nothing special about that. So if you're concentrating on just being available more, answering your emails quickly, being quick draw McGraw, being, the most accessible person, you're cannibalizing yourself. That way, you can respect your time. And other people will if you do. Because if you keep answering your emails all the time, if you keep responding to them when they call, answering your cell phone after hours, you're just teaching your whole audience around you to come eat you alive. You're being appetizing for the tiger to pounce. Stop being so appetizing. So I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing this will work, but having a plan and looking at your week, triaging your commitments, laying out time blocks means you have a fighting chance to be intentional instead of reactionary. Stay in the lanes. Be pig-headed. Be relentless. Make your time blocks. Yeah, sure, if you need to shift a few of them in negotiating with opportunities, of course. But 60 to 80%, what if you stayed intentional? What would be possible for you? So do you lock your whole week into place? No. You make structured flexibility plans. You make sure that there is time for flux. Maybe 6 hours of the day is intentional. The other 2 or 3 hours of the day is to pretty much work with what comes. But having an intention is important, and I recommend that if you're going to be intentional, you do it in the AM hours. You get up earlier. It'll be great because you'll get to things. People will leave you alone, especially if you're working in the house. Get into your office an hour earlier and start to knock out a few things in the morning that are your most important items. I recommend in the morning that you write down the 6 most important things that you're going to tackle today. Once you write those down, basically what you've done is you've itemized what you did upstream Sunday night. You said, this is what I'm going to be doing this week. These are my appointments. These are my time blocks, my priorities. These are the items I want to knock out. These are the goals in my 90-day rocks I'm going to pursue. So therefore, I'm going to itemize and align my week with those 90-day rocks. So if you've got activities for your life plan and your personal goals, time block them. Right? Time block exercise. Time block reading. Time block meditation. Time block date nights. Time block it all. Because if it's not scheduled, it's probably not going to get done. Your brain's not going to hold it. It doesn't store things like that. It shouldn't. You got way too much on your hard drive anyway. You need your RAM for other things. So give it a break. Rely on your calendar. Build it out. And then write down those 6 things. Now, after you write them down, what I'd like to have you do is assign the time to each one. It's very important you make up your mind about this. Because once you make up your mind about that time, you'll probably align how you're going to do it with that decision. If you think you can do it in an hour, you'll probably organize to do it in an hour. If you predict you'll do it in 2 hours, you'll fill the time to get it done in 2 hours. Basically, the supply rises to fit, or the demand rises to fit the supply. Because once you make a supply a dimension of time, whatever it is that needs to be done will be organized in that time. If you say, I'll get that report done today, you'll fill the whole day up to make sure that report gets done in a day. If you say, I'll get it done in 2 hours, you'll organize efficiently in 2 hours to get it done in 2 hours. See, because whatever our conceptual set point is, we organize around it. So if we say, well, I'll get it done in 6 hours, you'll organize that 6 hours in such a way to get it done in 6 hours. It's about making up your mind. It's not about whether you have enough. You say, well, I don't have enough time. The problem isn't that you don't have enough time because we all have 24 hours. It's that you don't think you do. And if you don't think you have time, you'll make sure that you don't. You'd ignore time available. You wouldn't even see it because you're under the spell of your belief that you have no time. But if you carve the time, if you organize the time, and you manage yourself around priorities that do matter, then you stay in the intention of it. Now, let me say to you that as you do this, you're going to make some enemies. The world is not going to be on your side. You're not going to have a cooperative world because that's not how it works. It works based on contradiction. Right? So you're not cooperating with what the world wants. If you did that, you'd be a mouse in a maze. You'd be organizing around your circumstances. You'd be so reactive, you wouldn't be able to end up anywhere. You'd get no movement. You would let the world take you wherever it is. You'd have the bull by the tail, not by the horns. So this is a different orientation. It's more intentional. It's more creative. Now, after you write down the time of each item on the 6, add it up. Total. Should be no more than 6 hours. If it's more than 6 hours, break it down into subtasks, steps. Then, what is the most reluctant item? The item that you most don't want to do. And so you decide what you're going to do with that. Now, if you're most reluctant to do it, you've got several options. First, you can eliminate the option. In other words, don't do it. Second, delegate it. And third, automate it. If you're going to do it now and do it first because you're going to have the most amount of energy at that time. In the morning, your morning burst is about 90 minutes. That's prime time. That's when you're going to get the most result out of your day. That's when you're going to be intentional, is that morning burst. That's where your biggest rhythm is. That's where your natural energy centers are. So the first hour and a half of the day will tell the tale. Was it a productive day or not? The average executive gets about 1 hour of goal-centric time out of every 7. Isn't that pathetic? But let's say that you organized it like this, and let's say you knocked out 3 of these daily 6 items by 12 noon. Now you got a sense of accomplishment. So you've got momentum and motivation and movement. Now you go into the afternoon, you knock out the other 3. Now, if you can do all 6 by noon, even better. That way it's your 100% day. You have a sense of accomplishment, and you've worked smarter because you've created the results that you laid out versus abiding by the time and the circumstances. Now, granted, there are going to be drop-ins, there's going to be parachute tasks that come in that have to be done by sundown. People want things. Things come at you. So we've got to simultaneously manage those decisions. We've got to control distractions. So one way you can do that is to ask yourself right in the moment of reflection, does this matter? When something comes into you, is it urgent? Is it important? How much does it matter? That way, hierarchically, you can compare it to what matters most. Then you could say, well, what would be the best thing that could happen if I did it right now? And what would be the worst thing that would happen if I did it right now? This is called an impact filter. So as you look at it, you filter it and say, all right, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? So you can make these decisions. And then you can decide if you're going to do it now or you're going to do it later. So a little bit of evaluation in the moment. It's called reflection in action or moments of awareness. It's about staying intentional. 4 of the questions I like to ask myself are, is this consistent with the 3 things that matter most today? If yes, do it. If not, delegate it, automate it, or eliminate it. Or do it later. So I've got options. I can dump it, I can do it, I can delegate it, or I can delay it. But I've got options. Those are my zip codes. That's where I dispatch it. Okay, so now I go through those options and then I identify a time and a place. So do you trust you to get it done later? Let's say that you reassign it to yourself. Go to your calendar, time activate it, write it down. Get out of your head. Don't rely on your head. Put it somewhere. Schedule it to where you'll review it later. Keep a project list, maybe in your Gmail, or keep a project list in an app, something that you like. If it's Outlook, great. Keep a task list or a project list called my daily project list. Keep it there. Now, your only 3 lists that you really need to review are your ongoing project list, kind of like a parking lot where you put stuff. When stuff drops in and it goes through the 4 Ds, dump, do, delegate, delay, you might put it on that list so you can review it at the end of the day, review it at the beginning of the day when you start your daily 6. Of course, your second list is the daily 6, and your third list is your end of day list of accomplishments, is what did you do? See, the last hour or half hour of the day isn't about finishing everything off. It's about getting ready for the following day, because the investment of that half hour will pay off massively the following morning. You might even do your daily 6 for tomorrow at the end of today. Just review your daily 6. Did you accomplish the whole 6? Why or why not? What did you learn? And then how are you going to position your 6 for tomorrow? So there's an iterative learning process. Keep your identity out of it. Let go of identifying with. You're not a better person if you were productive or a worse person. It's just learning. Whatever you did produced information that's actionable. Be objective about it, and then go on to the next concurrent daily 6. Again, go back to your weekly review. Look at what you set out for the week. Look at your time blocks. Think about your objectives for the week. And then also look at your 90-day rocks, your personal and your professional. Make sure that you're aligned in your daily 6 with what that is. So you're probably asking me, but yeah, I may knock out a few of these things, delegate, eliminate, automate. I may multiply my time. I may procrastinate a bit on purpose, delay things, do the 4 Ds. And I'm going to manage those incoming parachute tasks that drop in. That's fine. So I'm getting kind of the picture of a system here, JD. I'm working my ground floor moment. I'm managing my distractions. But I'm clearing the way, keeping the whirlwind at bay, and I'm executing toward my outcomes. Great. But what do I do when things start to get really, really tense? What do I do when I get all sorts of potential scarcities and losses of things that I'm going to deny? What do I do? Well, what you do is you inspire yourself to let it go. And you do that by remembering what's important. You do that by taking a few moments outside the typical tempo that you have. And that's how you run your life. That's how you run your free time. You have to have time for relaxing. For a lot of us, we have a hard time shutting down because we've made ourselves up to be this perfectionistic, challenger to ourselves, having to live up to these ideals, and we work longer hours thinking it's going to get us further. But the hours that we invest after 50 hours a week, we're not really making any traction. In fact, we're more mechanical and reactive, which inclines us to make more mistakes. So overall, it doesn't put us into the most productive movement. It causes us to be more likely to create messes in our life. And that concurrently creates more messes in our life because once you start down the path of screwing things up, now you have to fix things. Now you're more reactive. It's as if it's like putting out fires means you're being an arsonist. You're setting fires and other things. Because once you put the water on the squeaky wheel, inadvertently you're going to create a fire somewhere else. Every decision you're making is killing something off of something you're not going to do. There's opportunity cost on every decision that you make. That's why being aware of what matters is so important, so that you don't take a back step into that resistance. Because choice is confronting. Because every choice you make on what to focus on means you're not going to focus on something else. And that brings me to a fourth list. Your not to-do list. Write down right now 5 or 7 things you know you're not to do. You're absolutely not to do. You know how to be on guard. You're the authority over that rebel in you. Then you go, these are the things that I'm absolutely knowing I should not do. So don't negotiate with that. Keep that list at bay. All right, so you ask the first question. If I had 3 things that I was going to do today, would this be one of them? And then I ask the second question. Am I doing this out of fear? The third question is someone else better suited to do this than me? It's a great question. Is someone else suited to do this other than me? Or if I did this right now, does this get me to my 90-day goals? Does this get me there? Does mastering the skills involved with what I'm doing get me to my 90-day goals? Does this get me to my 3-year vision? Am I doing this out of fear? If I had 3 things that I'm supposed to do today, is this one of them? Is this the area where I'm most effective and have the most fun? Is this my personal gift? How do we stay in that domain? So you have to be your own bouncer. And when the fires get really hot, don't make a big deal out of it. It's like in the arts. You're making creative decisions. So it's about wanting what you want. When you're wanting a goal or you're wanting an outcome, you're working the outcome. It's not about the reward. It's not about chasing down the things you can do to feel rewarded. It's not about being satisfied or fulfilled. It's about what you do on the difficult days. It's not all the good times, because you'll do things easier. But it's about what you do when things are under pressure. You have to stay on track, keep your march, focus the disciplines of execution. Stay focused on leveraging your time. Keep the daily 6 intact. Do your weekly review. Stay true to your time blocking. Think about your 90-day outcomes. You can always recover, so if you fall off track, know that you're off track, come back on. What am I trying to create? What are my top priorities today? What's my not-to-do list? See, all these things are just controlling distractions. It's like you have a barrier around you. It's like a moat around the castle, and you're keeping it intact so that predators don't get in. The Trojan horse doesn't get into the castle. You've got to create your moat, and how you do that is set it up. But if you're too busy being busy to do what could make you a lot less busy, you're fatalized. Because then you're doing things that are continually taking you away from working smart instead of working hard. But how do we really conserve the energy to do it all? We have to set things up so we invest in the free time. Free time requires effort. We make effort to make less effort. We have to plan these days, carve them, stay true to them. I recommend that you take 150 of those 24-hour periods every year. Right? You say 10 days every 90 days, 10 days every 90 days, 10 days every 90 days, including weekends and some 3-day weekends with the government calendar. So it adds up to about 135, and then you add on another 15, and your goal becomes 150. Would you be surprised if I told you your most productive year will be the more time off that you take? You're probably saying that's impossible. It's got to be about the time I spend. No, it's not. It's about how creative you are. Because if you asked 10 of your A clients what they would really miss about you if you weren't here, they would tell you what you're unique at. They would tell you what your business does that no one else does. And if you continuously put structure around that and take everything away that limits it and make that the defining feature of your own personal brand and your own business brand, you'll continuously multiply because you're simply focusing on what matters most. That's where your biggest area of concentration is taking aim with your secret sauce. That's your X factor, right? That's your secret weapon, is your strength. But not only the strength that you're good at it, not only that you're superior at it, because that's what creates the relationships, but it does something to you. It brings you into enthusiasm and theo, God within. When you do it, you be alive. You bring yourself into aliveness when you do these activities. But I guarantee that right now, because you aren't planning it, because you aren't thinking about insulating yourself, you've gone offline on those. You're off your domains of self-efficacy. You started it when you started your business, but everything got complicated, and now it's about getting back to that. And I also know that most of those things are probably in the area of selling, because selling is helping. And that's when you probably enjoy your work, is you're assisting and helping others and creating value, listening to them, figuring out solutions, spending time with your clients, but you can't get to it because you're not planning your week, because you're not doing the daily 6, because you're not thematically time blocking. Right? I sound like a professional nag. Good. That's my occupation. See, we don't do these things for ourselves because we fall prey to our habits. We fall asleep and we start sleepwalking, hoping things will be different. That's insane. Wake up. This is about creative control. This is about coming back to creating, coming back to controlling the matter at hand, the choices that we make about it, the responses we have to the moments. Are we going to be intentional? How do we want to navigate? How serious are you about creating your aspirations and goals? Did you give up? Do you have a given up mentality? Did you lower your expectations or standards? Don't. You can rethink the future at any time. Do you need to justify your worth to do all this? No. It has nothing to do with valuing yourself. This isn't about being selfish. This isn't about taking it back and taking care of you. It's not that way. It's like in the arts. You're making choices about what you want to paint, what you want to bring into reality. It's not a big deal. You're focusing on what you want. And what you want is what you want. It doesn't need to be justified. It's just what you want. Why do I want it? Because I do. Because you do. And that itself is significant. That's a creative act. That gets you to do something. Because you want it. It's not a commitment. It's a choice. It's a choice. Why do I want to have optimal health? Because I want to be at my daughter's first dance and enjoy it with her and be healthy. Why does that matter? It just does. I see it. I want it. Therefore, I set my course and I organize my life. Why get organized? Because you want to create that. There's only one reason to get organized, to create what you want. That's why we get organized. You don't get organized because you're not, because you're going to solve a problem. No, you get simplification as a function of movement toward what you want to create. So we remove things that are outside of our domains of self-efficacy. We hand them off to other people that have a great personal gift in those areas. So it's about looking outward, getting help, occupying teamwork. You can't do it all. It's about looking around you and seeing that other people would be inspired by things that you find dreadful. They would. If you don't like prospecting, hey, there's plenty of people out there that love meeting new people. They do that for a living. That's what they do. They get on the phone. They make inroads. They start conversations. And they're great at it and they love it. They get energy from it. But maybe it's not you. Or maybe it's something in the backstage, something in your operation, accounting. It's dreadful. You're spending all this time on it. It's time to let it go. Have the criteria. Write out the success that you need to see from someone to trust them. Then hire the right person. Learn how to predict future performance. Then manage and monitor them by getting good reporting. Kind of information you need to stay secure. Coach them. See, now most of the things I've said in this audio about working smarter so far, getting the right people around you, setting up your week, changing your habits, looking at things different, being goal-centric, getting a focus on all this, you already know this. This isn't like I'm some genius telling you something new. I'm repeating something that you already know. This isn't about design. This is about getting serious and following through. This is about seeing it through. This is about doing it, getting on the bike. You don't learn to swim by sitting by the pool. You jump in. You got to engage. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, but you treat those two results with equal value. Then you learn through these processes how to capacitate your habits. You focus your habits in the direction of what you want. Your habits equal your future. So the first step, I think if you got into this, what would be like a step that you could take, a simple step, would be to start doing the daily 6. Second step would be to take a half day, schedule it 2 weeks out, where you think about your 1 year and your 3-year goals. Do some planning. Personal life, professional life. You do some new life dreaming. That's the energy center. That's what gets you to do something. That's the orientation to the North Star. That place, that anchor that I'm going to be consistently putting the rudder in the water to get to. Then you go to your 90 days. All right, what are my 90-day rocks? If I had to pick 3 or 5 personal goals or priorities, what would I do? And if I had to pick some professional goals or priorities, what's going to get me to these goals? Okay, now you've set a direction. You've got a daily habit and you've set a direction. We're aligning our actions with our intentions. Then we got to plan some time for you to get some downtime. Take this 150-day free day goal and start planning out in the next 90 days. Take 12 of those free days every month. Try it out. You're going to begin noticing, like the 4-minute mile, that it's possible for you to double your income and double your free time. And in fact, it's going to get you thinking smarter about the remaining time that you have. If you wanted me to prove this, take 168 hours and minus all that free time, and then the sleep, and then other rejuvenation moments, and then minus it your home stuff, your time with your kids, your homeschooling, whatever you do, then minus your cooking time, minus. Take down that 168 hours. But subtract it like the hourly glass, right? The sands of time that are continuing to remain, 168 hours. So you minus this, you minus that, you minus this, minus that, and it gets you to see that you can do it. That where is your time really going? Maybe you're not as conscious as you could be. Spending too much time on careless things or things that really don't matter. Television, entertainment, consumerism type stuff. Doing nothing. Screwing around. Instead of looking at things that are really important. One of the things that I think is magical about doing things, creating your life-building process, is you're intentional. And being intentional is you're involved. I think that's when people are most happy, is they get really good pleasure by being involved and immersed in bringing something into being that doesn't exist. They're in the creative process, but they're focusing their life as art. Why do we get organized? To create what we want. Why do we think about what we want to do in a week? To move toward what matters to us. Why do we organize our day? To contain distractions and stay focused on what matters to us. Why do we create what matters to us? Because it's a fundamental choice to organize our lives around what matters to us. Why matters? Well, it doesn't matter why. It just does. It's not what should, it's what does matter. So I leave you with this question. What do you want to create? What do you want to create? Responsibility isn't given to you. It's taken. Responsibility is taking action upon an outcome that matters to you and then setting your course of action from where you are, being honest about where you are in relationship to it and getting it. The gap is not a problem. The gap is an energy source. The farther the distance you have to go, the more energy you're required to work with. It animates you. Think of it like an archer and a bow. The more you stretch it, the more you propel the arrow. There's more distance to work with. So that's not about discouragement, right? It's about encouragement based on the distance. You learn that as a creator. That's what the pros do, is they learn how to hold space like that. So what do you want to create? Write down what your mind or your heart really comes up with. What are you organizing your life around? Toward what are you investing your life spirit? What really does matter to you in your life right now? What doesn't? What could you simplify, remove, or strip away, or let go of that doesn't matter to purport or support more of what does? Because getting to things that you're free to create, creative freedom, depends on freeing yourself up from things that are bogging you down. Maybe it's time to start making some of those decisions now about what's in the way becomes the way. That you transform your oppositions into actions. You think strategically, and you focus on the movement of getting to the North Star. And by the end of your life, you'll look back on this time and you'll know that you shred. You did things. You did things on behalf of what mattered to you. You'd be proud of yourself because you'll look back on this time and know that you didn't hesitate. You didn't cop out. You were a grown-up. You weren't a given up. You did something on behalf of what really did matter. And let me tell you that when you do that, you're more valuable to other people. People are attracted to leaders that know what matters because what's personal becomes universal. That's how visions become shared visions. If something really matters that's really noble, and other people start to get behind it, and it starts to multiply. It propagates, man. It starts to network itself because that destiny starts to work for you. It gets contagious. So let it out. Pop the champagne cork, so to speak. Fizz it. Open your heart. Release some of the fear. Release this thing in you that says, I don't know. Stop predicting the future and start creating one. Because when you do, you're going to find yourself becoming somebody that you've never been. And it's not about improving you. That's an act of violence. You're okay. There's nothing wrong with you. Focus on what you're trying to create. Bring yourself to it. Take the action. Get good at it. And you'll have a reliable creative process for bringing dreams and creations into being in your life. You could make it a way of life in all things. Your relationships, creating. Your business, creating. Your health, creating. Your finances, creating. It's all subject matter for the creative process. It's all the same structure. So I hope something in this audio has given you an itch. Maybe I've added something to your mindset, to your awareness that now you can integrate. Maybe you didn't see it before, but now you do. That's a breakthrough. Maybe it gave you a little more courage to commit yourself to some choices that you haven't been. And stop telling yourself that there's not enough. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. You just haven't made up your mind. There's no such thing as not enough. That's not positive thinking. It's about choices. It's about focus. It's about working smarter, not harder. If you'd like more information about being coached, great leaders are coached, you can reach us at highlevelperformance.com. That's highlevelperformance.com. I am JD, the founder of the VIP Coach. We are a one-on-one coaching program with High Level Performance, and we'd be glad to take your call or inquiry if you're an entrepreneur or business leader or high commission paid salesperson. You have high earning power. You're a high functioning executive. You're looking to take it to the next level. Right now, you're probably planning a comeback. Through all this time, you're thinking about reimagining the future. It's never been a better time than now to get help and to get yourself coached. One of the greatest gifts that you can give other people in your life to get yourself coached. It's one of the greatest gifts that you can give your life and your future self is to get yourself coached. Bring yourself along with more acceleration and speed and impact toward the outcomes and dreams that we're talking about right now. Thank you so much.